Well, it's an interesting question to ask. How is my childhood still showing up today in the present? It's an important topic to lean into, and many of us come into recovery thinking it's about behavioral management, and the behavior is the problem, but then we start to realize some things that are connected to our past, not to justify or even blame, but understand our full story. So how's my childhood still showing up today? Today we're going to talk about it. Welcome to Celebrate Recovery Official, a podcast that shares life-change stories, courage, hope, and leadership wisdom, all centered around the Celebrate Recovery principles birthed out of the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5, where Jesus, with his own words, gives us a map for life, starting with we're only blessed when we're spiritually poor as we face the events in our life that bring up hurts, the nasty core beliefs that affect how we see God, others, and ourselves, and circumstances that lead to unhealthy coping strategies and havoc on our relationships, ultimately to bring healing, new healthy truths, new healthy practices, and healthy community and fellowship with God. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. Struggle with drugs and alcohol and perfectionism. My name is Rodney, Global Field Director with Celebrate Recovery. Good to be back with you guys. Hope you're doing well. The weather is changing a little bit, maybe getting a little bit warmer where you are, and hopefully you're enjoying the season changes and enjoying the season changes as we continue to work through our recovery, continuing to learn and grow as believers in Jesus Christ on this road to recovery we call Celebrate Recovery. Thanks as always for getting the word out about this podcast. It's always so encouraging to hear you talking about it, you sharing this with other people. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas of topics to visit, something that's on your heart that you'd love to have expounded on. And so we're grateful for that. But so this topic, my childhood, sometimes we can get a little bit too far in the ditch of I must have been raised really badly, and it's all my parents' fault, and that's not what we're talking about here. But there are things, even in the healthiest families, we have events in our life that can leave markers on our life, and over time we begin to realize that it's not the problem's not the problem. Maybe there's something else going on. Maybe the anger that I'm struggling with has some roots that need to be pulled up. Maybe there's some fear, some control, people pleasing, even the addictions or shutting down, withdrawing, overreacting, whatever the thing is, we begin to realize, hey, this thing's got roots, and those roots have grown a lot, and we start to look back on our childhood, and what we learned in our childhood may have become the way we've survived in our adulthood. And again, it's not to blame, but it's to understand. If we can come to understand our story fully, it changes things. And it's not to say that we're bad people, that we're evil. We've just adapted to the broken world around us. And yeah, we make stupid choices and we sin ourselves, but thank God for the gospel that covers all of that. And this isn't to make anyone else feel bad or ourselves, but to understand that, to know that as we realize that there's roots to those things that I mentioned, then there's a process that follows. Wouldn't it be just overwhelmingly frustrating and hopeless if we said there's roots, too bad, move on, there's nothing you can do about it? But there is a process of letting Jesus do the healing, to bring the things to light, the way we used to survive, our survival for life, things that we learned in that. And so that passage that we go back to often in Principle 4, search me, God, know my heart. Is there anything in there that's offensive, that's displeasing, that's saddening your heart? And so in that, it's good as we understand our story to understand that our childhood, is not to blame it, but our childhood does shape more than we realize. There's such an important thing in our vulnerable places of our life when we're the most susceptible to connection, we're most susceptible to being shaped. We learn things. And it's a question that I've asked people, even in a therapy session. When did you first learn that the world wasn't safe? What did you learn in your family system about emotions, and were they welcome? Was it bad? Was it a negative? Did it overwhelm my family? Did needs matter? Did your needs matter? How did your family deal with conflict? When did you learn what to be loved and secure in your life and what that felt like? When did you first learn that? Or did you learn that? Where did you learn about having to earn approval? And when you got punished, why were you getting punished? Can you understand that, and can you learn from that? And I think when a baby, and it's good to think about when a baby comes into the world, they are coming from a well-nurtured, safe, warm, protected womb. And then they're thrust into this bright, cold, hungry world. And the question that we start asking even as little kids is, am I safe? Does anybody want me? I think it was Kurt Thompson that said that everyone coming into the world is looking for someone looking for them. And when I know there's someone there looking for me, it changes me. But this question we're asking is, somebody want me? Am I safe? Do I matter? Can I trust you? What do I have to do to be loved? Is it about my performance? Is it about my identity? Is it my value? And those things can stick with us, and they can follow us into adulthood. And we don't consciously think about this, but emotionally and experientially, I was talking to a client recently, and they said, well, it's just going to take time. Well, it's time, but it's also experience. When we are in these small groups and we begin to allow other people into our life, it begins to change us emotionally, mentally, through community, spiritually. As we invite God into those spaces, we begin to change our experience from our past. But we have to walk through it. A valley isn't intended to walk through, and it feels scary to do that. But when we know God doesn't skip over the valley. He meets us in it, and he wants to meet you in it. And so sometimes in our growing up years, we've learned some things, some covert and overt rules, stated and unstated, just witnessed and experienced, that tell us something. That's that Proverbs 22, right? Train up a child as he or she should go. And when I think about some of the woundedness from my stepfathers, I do have a different perspective. In my hurt, I've been able to find healing, bring it to Jesus. But I now have a perspective understanding that these guys walked into their relationship with me carrying a wounded identity and their own brokenness, and they would do what Ephesians 6:4 reminds us not to do, to provoke a child to anger. And I think it's because of their own childhood stuff. Unresolved childhood is shaping them more than they realize, and then it shaped me, created new wounds. And when we talk about hurt people, we can break that cycle and know that helped people, healed people, help people, heal people. God invites us into that space. But real big on attachment, and sometimes I've been doing some extra study, even continuing education around this topic around attachment injuries. And as I work with couples going through affairs and or situations where they were dropped and they needed someone with them. Sometimes we don't realize the wounds that we're looking at today are through the lens of yesterday. And that can be painful. But the attachment, real quick recap, what's attachment? Attachment is just an emotional bond. It's kind of formed in our growing up years by our caregiver. Early in life, we experience this, what it's like to be cared for, and we form this emotional bond. When you think about a mom holding its child, that baby feels warm and secure, loved, valued, etc. So in that's the textbook healthy attachment. We call that secure attachment. I'm safe. I'm loved. My emotions do matter. People can be trusted. But many of us have experienced, myself included, we've experienced attachment wounds where we've experienced maybe inconsistency to that safe and loved and valued message, or maybe we've experienced abandonment or emotional, physical neglect, chaos in the home, criticism, can't ever get it right. Maybe we've witnessed addiction. That was my story growing up, a lot of addiction in the home, or even worse, abuse. We've seen abuse. We've witnessed it. We've experienced it. And there's just kind of this overriding sense of unpredictability. I don't know what to expect. So when I have unpredictability, in fact, if you don't know what's going to happen in the next minute, it can create chaos in your body. Your nervous system stays on alert. And so in that, we adapt and we try to cope with what's happening us in that. And that's where anxious attachment and that core fear, again, we've talked about this on previous attachments, but podcast, where that core fear of attachment is abandonment. And my heart, when I'm in anxious attachment, is please don't leave me. And I cling to you. So I can live in this state of fear of rejection or clinginess. I think a term that I heard not too long in the last couple of years I hadn't heard before is fawning. We're clingy. We overthink our relationships. Do they really love me? People pleasing, codependency, emotional dependency. So we can get stuck there, or we can find ourselves in avoidant attachment, kind of recapping a little bit of a previous episode, but it does tie with how our childhood shapes us more than we realize. Avoidant is our biggest fear is vulnerability. I'm not going to let anybody get close to me again. I was that way with male relationships. You guys have heard my story, but so that can show up in some unhealthy ways that we need to be aware of. Again, it's not our fault why we got where we are, but it does become our responsibility. So we'll create emotional distance because we don't want anybody to hurt us. It's kind of that hard heart. No one's going to hurt me. We have difficulty trusting people. We shut down or we're just, again, that core fear of vulnerability. It just doesn't feel good, and so I'm not going to go there. And that's just a self-protection. That's why I like to call the habit part of our wheel of hurts, hang-ups, habits, defenses, and protections. But here's the cool thing. Through new experiences, through others in our life, we realize that two are better than one. That if I fall down, you're going to be there for me. And I begin to experience what it's like to have somebody show up for me, for someone to be safe for me. Or we have disorganized attachment. That's also one of those things. Talk about that more in a second, but want to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Thanks so much for being with me. We'll continue in just a moment. Be right back. Hey friends, did you know that we have sold out the Summit 2026 this year? Exciting. But where do you go if we sold out? Well, we've got the West Gathering. You can go to the West Gathering. It's on the West Coast in California. You can find out information. It's the same main stage content. It's intimate. We gather, just a sweet time of connection. You're going to walk away inspired. Join us for the West Gathering. Go to the website, celebraterecovery.com, for more information. Hope to see you there. All right, so right before the break, we're talking about disorganized attachment. Real quick on that, I want closeness, but it feels unsafe. I don't want to do that. So I might allow you in, push you away, pull you in. I kind of have this fear mixed in with the longing inside my heart. I am confused about intimacy. But here's what I want you to hear. If that's your story, if you have kind of disorganized attachment, is 1 Corinthians 14:33. God is not a God of disorder, but of peace. The disorder that you may be coming to realize, God can organize, but it just takes time sometimes. So many of our reactions, again, our survival strategies. And I was sharing this with a couple sponsees recently. What used to work for us, what protected us as kids, is actually sabotaging me down. So I need to be mindful of that. So we're moving into a new space. When we become a man, we put the ways of our childhood behind us, as 1 Corinthians 13:11. We're coming away from the old ways, the ways we used to act, the way we used to talk, the way we used to respond. While that made sense in that season, we're trying something new. But I think a big thing is just around our family of origin. Another way of saying that is my family system. And what roles did we play? What was your role in your family system? So in our homes, again, that's the covert. Overt is what the words and the data. Covert are the things that we just learn through body language and tone and reactions. Don't talk about things like that. You don't trust people. Don't feel, because those emotions are bad. Or it's performance over relationships or authenticity. We keep silent instead of being honest, or protect your image at all costs, even if it prevents you from healing. So we are adopting these roles in our dysfunctional family system, and I want to give you just a kind of a brief overview. We talk about this in the adult child of dysfunctional family, but there's some that they're kind of the hero. I'm going to make everyone proud in this family system. I'm the overachiever. I'm over-responsible. I'm kind of that. And by the way, this was my role in my home. We can become perfectionistic. We carry just this weight of pressure. There's an overwhelming sense of fear of failure that I would have as that little boy growing into manhood, and an overwhelming sense of shame as well. But Celebrate Recovery taught me that His grace is sufficient for me. His power is made perfect in my weaknesses, perfectionism, overachiever, over-responsible. Wait, you're saying, God, through your word, Paul's saying that your power is made perfect in our weaknesses? Yes. Isn't that just freeing to think about that? So maybe you were the hero. Maybe you were the peacemaker. I'm going to keep everything calm. Everything's got to be calm. Everybody's got to be happy all the time. We're going to avoid conflict. And so in our adulthood, we avoid conflict, and there's cost to that, right? Or we're highly sensitive to anything that feels like tension. We lose our own voice because we don't want to kind of rock the boat. But what we learn through Celebrate Recovery is we can speak truth in love, that we don't have to be a peace. In fact, I would say peacekeeper versus peacemaker. The scriptures say that Jesus says you're blessed when we're peacemakers. But when we're trying to keep the peace in our family system growing up, it starts to translate to our adulthood. What about the scapegoat? Were you the scapegoat? You're kind of the black sheep of the family. We become rebellious. We get blamed for everything. It's like you're the reason our family, everyone's kind of pointing toward you. That scapegoat can be really emotionally expressive or carry the pain that the whole family system is carrying because it's your fault. And that just feels gross, doesn't it? Or what about the lost child? Nobody sees me because I don't get in the way. I'm not doing anything. I just kind of disappear. And when I disappear, I feel safe. So I withdraw, I isolate, I hide emotionally. And let me just say that role that you've learned as a little kid, and maybe you've carried it into adulthood, is not how Christ sees you. In fact, Isaiah 43 reminds us that God calls you by name, and he says, you are mine. A friend of ours here locally wrote a song based on that scripture, and I can hear her saying, you are mine, you are mine. That's what God says about you. I've called you by name. You are mine. And then we have the caretaker, and there's all kinds of, we could go into these more extensively, but I just want you to understand how these roles from our childhood can play into our adulthood. The caretaker is taking care of everyone else but themselves, and we can get deeply rooted in our codependency. It's hard for us to receive help. Our identity is kind of wrapped up in being the rescuer, and you can see how that can play into when we become leaders. How that childhood that I learned as a kid is playing into even my role as a leader now. I have the need to rescue. I shared this recently in a talk just around codependency and leadership, but in Galatians, it has this bookmark, carry each other's burdens. And then verse 5, that's verse 2, verse 5 says, but each person should carry their own load. But as a caretaker in our dysfunctional family, we've learned to carry everyone's burdens. And there's other rules we could talk about, but many people, especially leaders, can lead from our old survival roles. And so maybe you're a leader and God is tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, you're leading out of your survival, not your healed identity. Let's pay attention to that. What is that coming from? Where did you learn that? And so as I'm thinking about my role in my old family system, recovery it creates healthy, safe space to help us ask those important questions like, who am I apart from this role? Do I have an identity if I'm not the hero or the rescuer or the caretaker or the peacekeeper, whatever? What in this is mine to carry? Some of us have been assigned this role unfairly. Remember 2 Corinthians 5:17, we read it often. If anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old is gone, the new is here. So what am I allowed to release back to you, Lord? What's mine to carry? What's mine to take ownership of? And what's mine to carry? And it's such a healthy thing for us to ask. And then I think just understanding the emotional triggers that can come up. Sometimes when I see overreaction or avoidance, those are things I want to pay attention. What just came out of me? That my past is kind of hijacking my present. And it's good to note that triggers aren't just an overreaction. It's kind of this present experience that's touching things from my past, maybe an unhealed or not fully healed past wound. So if somebody interrupts me, I feel invisible. Or if someone gives me feedback, the fact that you had to give me feedback makes me feel worthless. It makes me feel weak. Or if someone does kind of shut down and pull away emotionally, panic starts to just stir up in my nervous system. Why is that? Because my nervous system, and we talk about this with trauma, it's not just a memory, it's something that lives in my body, and it remembers what my mind may have forgotten. So we want to pay attention when our body reacts to this space. And here's the thing, sometimes we're scared of triggers. Triggers are actually super helpful because they're teaching us something. It's just like emotions, they're information. It's revealing maybe some unresolved pain or some unmet needs, emotional needs. Maybe there's some fear that I'm dealing with or unresolved grief. Sometimes anxiety and depression will manifest themselves through unresolved grief in my life. Maybe there's some shame, there's some old belief systems. This recovery process, this is why I love Celebrate Recovery. It's learning to become curious and be proactive versus becoming reactive. And instead of that lie that the enemy is saying, something's wrong with you. What's wrong with me? We begin to ask healthy questions like, what happened to you, Rodney? What is this trigger touching from your past? Rodney, what is Jesus wanting to heal in your life? Again, if we read the book of James, by the way, I love the book of James. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. What is that that's coming out of me? Because usually when that comes out of us, we don't like that, and we want to shut it down, and that's where the shame starts to set in. And that can be a hard place. So important to lean into that space. I'm going to end the episode there, and I'm going to pick up with a part 2 on this because there's a few things that I ran out of time to cover, but we'll cover another episode. But again, we're not trying to excuse behavior, but we're trying to understand our story. If you can understand your story and how your childhood is showing up today, it can help change the present, shape our future in a new way. I hope that's helpful for you, and we'll continue the conversation. Hey, as always, thanks for being with me today. It's always good to have you, and I pray that you'll join me next time. Until then, God bless you guys.